Welcome to What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com, and thank you for tuning in. This is your host, Bishop Bowser. We have an exciting show for you today, and everyone should be listening. Right now, I want you to text or call 7 people and tell them to tune in to this show. Today, we have a good one for you. We have Tasha Williamson, co-founder of the San Diego Compassion Project and director of the National Conflict Resolution Center of the Southeast San Diego region, with us. And we are going to be discussing community connections to resources, engagement, and organizing. What I want you to do is also, if you have questions, to tweet me. And you can tweet me at Cornelius Bowser Sr. at Shombe77. That is, Shombe is spelled TSHOMBE 77. So tune in right now and call your people and tell them to tune in to this show, because we're going to have a good one for you. Now, as usual, I like to start out with a joke. So here's my joke. There were 5 people aboard an airplane having engine trouble, getting ready to crash. However, there were only 4 parachutes. Everyone wondered what should be done to determine who should get the parachutes. One person said that he was the smartest thing that hit the face of the earth and that he was too smart to die. So he took one of the parachutes and jumped out of the aircraft. The second person said that she was too important to die. She had children and a family to take care of, and they depended on her to take care for them. So she took one of the parachutes and jumped out of the aircraft. The third person said that he was too important to die because his family depended on him for survival. He was the head of the household and the sole breadwinner. So he took one of the parachutes and jumped out of the aircraft. Finally, there were only 2 people left and 1 parachute. One person was 12-year-old and the other was a 65-year-old man. The old man said, "Well, son, I have lived a good life and you are too young to die. You have a long life ahead of you, so take the last parachute." The boy asked, "Why, sir?" The old man said, "Well, there's only 1 parachute left." The little lad said, "Sir, there are really 2 parachutes left." The old gentleman asked excitedly, "Yeah, how?" "Well," replied the boy, "you know that guy who thought he was the smartest and greatest thing that hit the face of the earth? He grabbed my backpack." All right, let's move on to news and current events. Today, I want to talk to you about black women and the church. And you know, black women confront the worst relationship market of any group of economic and cultural forces that is not their making. And because most black women are limited to marrying black men, it has worsened the situation. And let me tell you why. Number one, nearly 2 million black men are either currently in prison or have been in one. Number two, 17% of black men have had prison experience compared to 7.7% of Hispanics and 2.6% of whites. Number three, 40% of the prison population are black men. Number four, black women outnumber men 2 to 1 in graduating. Marriage is a matter of love and commitment, but it's also an exchange. A black man without a job or the likelihood of landing one cannot offer a woman enough to make that exchange worthwhile. Because black men are in short supply, their options are better than those of black women. A desirable black man who ends a relationship with one woman will find many others waiting. That's not so for black women. Black women do marry. When they do marry, they are more likely than any other group of women to earn more than their husbands. Even as divorce rates have declined for most groups during the past few decades, more than half of black marriages end up in divorce. Black women lead by the most segregated, intimate lives of any minority group in the U.S. They are less than half as likely as black men to wed across racial lines. Numerous studies of internet dating confirm that black women are the partners least desired by non-black men. Black women are also the majority of any race of women that are sex trafficked, of confirmed sex trafficking victims whose race was known. 26% were white and 40% was black. So it is undisputed that the black community in America is the most religious group, not only in this nation, but arguably in the entire world. Is this ongoing religious experience impacting Black America to love God as reflected in obedience to his word? In the Black church, Black women are the majority group that fill the pews and seats in the Black church. 57% of Black Americans profess to be born again Christians compared to 33% of adults nationwide. 83% of Blacks say their religious faith is very important in their lives compared to 66% of whites. 75% of Blacks say they believe God is the all-powerful, all-knowing creator who rules the world today. 2/3 of Blacks strongly affirm the Bible's accuracy compared to less than 50% for whites, Hispanics, and Asians. 92% of Blacks report praying in the last 7 days compared to 82% of whites. Blacks are the most religious group in the nation, but only 10% believe moral truth is absolute. So then, the question I want to ask, what in the world is going on in the church, and what are our pastors teaching regarding the moral code, the value of human life, the institution of marriage, family dignity, and the health of the Black community? And so that's something for you to think about, and I hope you do think about it and to start holding these pastors accountable, because the church is in trouble, and that puts the Black community in trouble. So now, I'd like to introduce to you Tasha Williamson. She is co-founder of the San Diego Compassion Project and she's the director of tell us what you're director of.
Center for Community Cohesion with National Conflict Resolution Center.
Right, I want to say it right.
Thank you.
So, and we welcome you to what's happening now, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you as well.
All right. So, who really is Tasha Williamson?
Starting from my background, I come from South Central Los Angeles, and I moved here in 2000 to San Diego. Married a man who was in the Navy, and before then, of course, I have children, and so I'm a mother, and subsequently, my kids attended San Diego Unified School District. And out of that, some issues and concerns happened, and we relocated. We were able to negotiate and relocate my kids to schools that reflected them. So we moved my oldest son to Lincoln High School. It was just starting. I think it had been built, and we interviewed Mel Collins, and felt like it was the best fit for us. So my son went to Lincoln High School. My daughter went to Johnson Elementary. And then, of course, I had one that was at De Portola Middle School and kept him there because it was a good school. So, it accomplished everything that we needed the school to accomplish for my son to transition into high school. From that, I was very active in Lincoln High School in Johnson, and met a few people at the parent center that was there, and they introduced me to some programs that were getting started. I guess they had listening parties, and so they were working with the Jacob Center. And so from that, I started going to those meetings and got introduced to several people within the Jacob Center. And we began what was known as Project Safeway, where we stood on the corners and monitored children walking to and from school. From that, I became the program manager and managed a group of people and staff and volunteers that were monitoring kids to and from. And then, of course, Michael and Monique, Michael Taylor Jr. and Monique Palmer were subsequently killed and leaving a party. And we started, me and Lynn Sharp Underwood and Pastor Angie Ward started San Diego Compassion Project. And from then on, I moved back to L.A. and back and forth from L.A. to San Diego, and now currently, back in San Diego, still doing San Diego compassion work and community assistance support team work, as well as now thankful to NCRC for the director to become the director of the Center for Community Cohesion, which will be here in April in Southeastern.
The Community of Cohesion, that is with the National Conflict Resolution Center, right?
Correct, it is Center for Community Cohesion.
You said NCRC, but that's the National Conflict Resolution Center. Can you tell us about that?
So National Conflict Resolution Center does mediations, it's really, as far as Southeastern is concerned, really looking at the prison pipeline. And so they do restorative conferencing circles, which takes kids, juveniles, before they are, we have 2 phases before they're charged. It's called pre-charge, where they never see a trial. And takes the victim and the person who harmed the victim, the juvenile, and puts them together with other members that support both, and other members from the community, and helps them to come to a resolution. And it could have many different layers of benefits and accountability as well. And so it's called RCC, which is Restorative Conferencing Circles.
And you're the director for Center for Community Cohesion, which is going to be in Southeast San Diego.
Correct. And so the program, which will be under Maite, and she will run Restorative Conferencing Circles. And then we have also the school-based, which is under Justine. Okay. So you know, everybody, when they come to the center, they will be able to meet both. Many people already know both ladies, very amazing and inspiring women that provide opportunities for, you know, other than incarceration.
What is your responsibilities as the Center for Community Cohesion?
So my responsibilities are to really bring community members together, and let them know that they have a place in the center, and also just, you know, helping to facilitate cohesion in the community. Some of the stuff that we've been doing recently and for years, but letting them know that now there's a place where they can come, where they can get trainings, the art of inclusive communication. We also have the exchange. We have many different trainings that we can provide, and also supports that we can provide. And then we're also partnering with an array of different organizations and programs. So any programs, of course, that, you know, want to be a part of the center, or that want, you know, us to be a part, help them with supportive services as far as training and mediation, facilitation, please, you know, contact me, and I'll be out there in the community also meeting with folks to let them know that, you know, we're here together to support one another. Right.
So your responsibility is going to be directed in the Southeast San Diego area, or does that expand throughout the city, the county? How does that work?
So it would be the Southeastern area. The Diamond area is the core. But again, as you know, we will not turn anyone away that's outside of that core area. Right. But the work is for the core area.
Okay. So in a moment, we're going to take a break here, and we thank God for having Tasha Williamson with us. And when we come back, we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper, and we're going to look at community and how we can connect the community to these resources, and what about community engagement, and what about community organizing. We're going to get into that because we want our community's needs to be met. And I believe that, you know, the job that Tasha Williamson have will be a part of that work. And so we for sure want to get everybody educated and up on the National Conflict Resolution Center and the work that they're doing over there. All right? So we'll be back in a moment. Thank you for tuning in to What's Happening Now. This is your host, Bishop Bowser. And stay tuned, because we'll be right back after these brief moments of commercials.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
Well, we were building a bonfire, and I saw some, like, dry brush and leaves around, so, you know, I said to move the bonfire somewhere else, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear shows up and hugs me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. He likes it when people help prevent wildfires. It hits him close to home. Not everybody gets the hug, my friend. So that's pretty special to get a hug from Smokey Bear.
So it was him. Hey, guys, I told you it was Smokey.
Okay, well, congratulations, my friend. And thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
Dave, what are you doing?
Just sending a gift to Dave 2037.
Who?
Me in the future. I save a little money from every paycheck as a gift to Dave 2037, so he can spend it on things like anti-gravity boots or a hologram Doberman, something cool like that. I think Dave 2037 deserves it. He worked hard. What are you getting Steve 2037?
I guess I was thinking Steve 2037 would just fend for himself.
Well, all right, but don't expect to be borrowing my anti-gravity boots.
You want to have money in your future? You got to start saving now. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free ideas and easy ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
Hey, let's just hope Steve 2037 doesn't get his hands on a cold time machine, because he is going to come back here and knock some sense into you.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
The soul of San Diego, KBLK.
All right, welcome back to What's Happening Now. This is your host, Bishop Bowles on KBLKradio.com. And we have our guest here, Tasha Williamson. She co-founder of the San Diego Compassion Project and the director of the Center for Community Cohesion, a program that is a part of the National Conflict Resolution Center. And so we thank you, Tasha, for being with us, and we want to get right back into this. We're talking about community and responsibilities, your responsibilities with the program that you're with. And, so my next question is, in the community that you serve, what are some of the unmet needs?
So I think that there are a lot of unmet needs in the community that we serve. Housing, just social economic services. Before we started, we were talking about poverty lines, and that is a real issue. Violence, public safety is a dynamics. Education is a dynamics, and that again, going back that prison pipeline, all of those things. If people are not, on a certain level of all of those dynamics, then they will flow right into the prison pipeline, and so and have a very difficult time getting off of that pipeline or out of that pipeline. And so we tackle really communication. Communication is our expertise. And so in communication, in our expertise, we bring to the table, which many other people will need to come to the table to help deal with this prison pipeline that has been going on for decades. We bring to the table, communication and communicating effectively, and learning how to communicate when there's conflict or disagreements and things like that. And so the things that the Center for Community Cohesion is bringing is mediations, facilitating groups, and again, that restorative conferencing circles, and we do deal with there's 4 phases as well as a research and evaluation piece, but we do have community engagement where we are bringing in a lot of that is with the Southeastern Strong Group, which you're also a part of.
Now before we get to community engagement, let me ask you something else, because one of the things when you bring it up about the prison pipeline and our communities in Southeast San Diego, people of color, and more specifically dealing with blacks, because as I was reading those stats, 40% of prison population are black men, and and they're just talking about the black woman and the black family and how it is it relies on that man being that breadwinner and so on. What is with all your experience, not just with the National Conflict Resolution Center, but in all your experience, but including that in the community, especially the black community, how vital is the role and important is the role of the black church to be involved?
Well, I think that, dating back from, even slavery, that is where that was a safe haven for our people. This was a place where we could come and communicate. This was a place where we could come and worship. This was a place where we could come and find support. Right. Even my grandmother talked about how when growing up in the South, when your neighbor needed, people knew what their neighbors needed. Right. They knew when the neighbor needed food, and the women would come together and cook to make sure that family was fed. Right. The men would come together to build. If the family needed a fence, if the family needed, they would come together and they would build that. And the children all played together. Right. Where friends grew up, and it was more like family than just race. Everybody was connected. And so I think that we've lost that in some way. And there's a lot of reasons why. Right. But it all, again, if we look back in time, the church laid certain foundations. But they accepted you whether you believed or not. It was a place to go to be fed, mentally and physically. It was just a place where people felt safe.
And as I'm listening to you say that, and I put my own self in situations that I was in when I was gang banging on the streets, banging and drugs, and committing all the sinful things that people do when they don't believe in God, which I didn't believe in God. I don't. Even back then, I didn't see a lifeline or a connection with the community and the church, the black church. Of course, when I got saved and got in church, it was God's doing to lead me, into church and things like that. But I didn't see no connection between that. And I think that when you talk about that pipeline to prison, I know when I did get in church, there was a great benefit in the sense of making those connections with the Word of God and the moral teachings I was getting, the responsibilities they were instilling in me as far as being a man and, raising a family and sticking with one wife and the whole thing, all the things that we should do that to make a healthy community. I was taught those biblical principles, godly principles, once I got in church. But there's a couple things I'm looking at. One is that connection between the black church and the community, and number two. But I think that from where I see today, especially as a pastor, the church has left teaching men how to be godly men, and you're not a pastor, you're not a theologian, so I'm not going to put those responsibilities. But from the community side, and as a person that's on the outside looking in, what can the church do to change that?
You know what? I think that the church is, no matter what denomination or faith they are, I feel a disconnect because I don't see everyone in the churches coming together. Right. I see them divided. Right. And I mean, the community sees them divided. It's not just me. Absolutely. And it's very difficult to look at people that, of that stature. Because in the black community, pastors are our leaders. Right. Because who is more powerful than our God? And if you are a representative of Him, then again, people look at you and you have a level. A pastor walking the room, people change the way they sit, how they talk, because out of the respect for God. And so when you see folks who are representatives in a pastoral leadership divided, right? So we got to come together. How do you now take that and come together when you're divided in the community? Absolutely. If the people who are representing God in the most highest form of pastorship aren't together, then it begins, especially people who are laymen in faith, who are not there yet or who want to be there. But they see the division, it makes it a little bit more difficult in the community for us to be comfortable to come together with differences, or even people of other differences. Our community is divided, and I'm not going to blame it on the church because it's all of us. We all have to come together. We all have to be united, and we all have to find better forms of or ways. We just, first and foremost, we gotta forgive. Because in the Bible it talks about that. And our pastors have to forgive one another. Our gang members have to forgive one another. Our mothers and fathers have to. Everybody just forgive. So because we're losing. We're losing. We're losing in every aspect, whether it's poverty, housing, transportation, food, our educate. We are losing because there is not that many of us. So
let me ask you in regards to that, because I think it all connects together. When you hear politicians talk, they always say, when they pulling back money and things like that, they say, oh, well, the church should be doing that. The church should be doing that. But when we talk about these unmet needs, why do you think these needs are not being met? Some of the things you mentioned as far as housing and the various, treatment programs, different things that people have need of in the community. Why these needs are going unmet, do you think?
Well, I think that a lot of it is because, there are services out there. Growing up in my household, I know many households, not all, but many households may, what goes on in the home stays in the home. And so growing up with that, even for it has effects for generations and impacts. And so people are not always readily capable, because of these generations passed down, to ask. We are a very proud people. And it takes a lot. When somebody asks you for help them. Do whatever you got, because we come from a history of pride. That's true. We're supposed to be able to be, I heard, I hear a lot, man up. And people take that literally. But men cry.
That's right.
They are in pain.
That's right.
They suffer.
That's right.
They hurt. They need help. They doubt. They have moments of weakness, and we should not expect them to man up. We should expect them to receive support and help.
Exactly.
Whenever they need it, because it makes them stronger. I've never seen a person who is successful, not fail. Every person I've known that has had success, and even those who've had the greatest success, have had a lot of failures to get there.
And somebody to pull them up and help them in that.
Exactly.
Let me ask you another question. What about the San Diego Police Department? Do you see them as a community resource?
Definitely. I know that the climate of policing is, is twofold. You have, video and audio and, emails that show deep-seated, racism with a few officers. And I mean, I'm not saying a few like 3, but in different police departments, there are officers that, have done things that are unethical, inappropriate, illegal, that have harmed or killed, individuals. However, that is not the whole department. And one of the things that I'm finding more and more, whether it be police or pastors or anyone, blacks or whites or Latinos, the few who do the wrong we box the whole group into this box of wrong.
And doing that kind of damages the relationship with the community and saying a police department, which we're getting some other things, or I should say law enforcement. And if there are resources from law enforcement that can benefit the community, we miss out on that because of the damaged relationship.
Exactly. But it takes two. It takes two in a relationship. Right. The police and the community. Right. And my view, I see everybody that's working or living in the community as community.
Right, exactly.
And
how's the police community?
So for me, because they provide services, people may not like all of the services that they provide, but they have the homeless outreach team, of which those officers come out, and when somebody is homeless, they come out, and they are officers that people have never seen. They don't care they don't judge you, they don't care what your dynamics are. Right. They will meet you where you are. Right. They will take you wherever you need to go, whether it's a job. They have beds available in different shelters that are only available to the police, where I can contact them and say, hey, we need a bed. They have transitional housing units that offer help for mothers with children, and women, and so they have all these opportunities.
Do they have anything?
They don't even care if you're a gang. If you're a gang member, they have. I don't believe that the homeless outreach team only deals with homelessness.
No, I'm talking about just in general. San Diego Police Department.
San Diego Police Department has with the gang street. Gang Street team, which is GST, and then they also have the Gang Street unit. They also have services not for. Well, they have the mentorship programs, so which CAST and other organizations and wraparound. They also have Opportunity Network. Some of these are juvenile based, and some, but these groups do not turn people away. Right. So, and they work with the police department to try and get gang members to follow, a wraparound program and a mentorship program to help get them removed from the gang detail list.
Right. And I know that one of the things we, many times the community don't understand is that the San Diego Police Department, we're talking about resources, they also do gang intervention themselves. They have a program?
They have a program, and the officer, they have one officer. And so for me, I wish they, I wish they had 10 officers. I wish that, Chief Zimmerman would go to the city council and ask for, $3 million so that she could bring she could bring gang, intervention officers to 10, to cover, because the one officer they have is, he comes from a history of being an officer that's suppressed. That was his job.
Right, suppression.
And now he is an officer that is the most compassionate. Everybody can change, And in the community, I've talked to community members, and this officer made arrests, many arrests. But now this officer gives kids clothes, buys foods for families, takes kids to programs, goes to their schools and makes sure they're on task. He helps the whole family. He's one officer with 50 kids, and there are so many other kids that need his support, but he can't because he's one. Because the investment in intervention is just not grown yet within the police department as it has with the investment in suppression, which is that is why they got started. Is to, people do wrong and they make arrests. However, they have programs that just don't, they're not out there. The information is not out there. The fact that there are community organizations and programs that are working to make sure to gain momentum so that intervention can become, more popular, and funded, invested, by stakeholders as well as
and so that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that even with San Diego Police Department or law enforcement, they have resources too for the community if the community is willing to accept those resources and get connected to those resources. Now, I also want to catch you because we're talking about resources. What about the DA's office? Do they have resources also for the community?
Yes, the DA's office does have resources, and it's my understanding that there is a center that the DA office is funding that will also be in Southeastern. But outside of all of that, not really knowing all of the things that the DA has done outside of also, the suppression. Going through tours of the CTC, that's, over there in Point Loma area, seeing, the works that...
Can you tell us what CTC is?
Community Transition Center, I think it is. And it was started with, I think J.J. Anderson was the one that pushed. Right.
And J.J. Anderson is, if for our listeners, J.J. Anderson is with the DA's office. He's like a community liaison. And the Community Transition Center basically telling us that he championed that.
Yeah, J.J. championed to have this. And a lot of people from Southeastern have been supported as they transition out of prison into this center to get wraparound support to prevent recidivism. And it was amazing to tour, to see that, they capture all data. They capture, every aspect of need that a person may have, they have it at that center. People have to be ready. You come there and they are accepting of you. And they, when we were talking, they've had people that have come back, repeat visitors, and have, after, not all of the people have come back, but they've had a few people who have come back, and then they have some people who've come back and are working.
Now let me ask you this
as well.
Because when we mentioned the DA, that kind of put an uneasiness on people, because of suppression tactics and things like that. Some in the black community are upset with the DA's office and don't want to have anything to do with them. How can one repair the damage and connect the community to those resources in the DA's office?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that, one of the things that we've learned as little kids is that there has to be, an atonement. And, the DA, has to be willing to sit down with everyone. And everyone has to be willing to sit down with the DA. Because there are services that the DA is going to continue to get, but there's also, real communication that needs to happen. People need to vent. People need to be heard on both sides. Because we sat in a meeting and the DA really felt that she was doing what people wanted her to do.
And let me interject as you're going on. I just want to interject this because I know that to be true in the sense that there were some black community citizens that was complaining about something that was happening in a certain area in the community. And one of the things I shared with one of the young men who actually ended up telling the group this is like, you have to be careful of complaining that you got drug problem here, you got this here, and something needs to be done. Because when you start complaining about that, law enforcement responds. But sometimes it's just not a problem right there on that street corner. That investigation can lead to your home and other people's homes and other people's children and so on, to where the net might spread so wide where you might net 100 kids and you're like, hey, we don't want that. Well, you got to be careful of what you ask for. And that's why I think community-oriented policing is so important because we want to solve the problems without making so many arrests.
Correct. And I think, again, where, Center for Community Cohesion comes in is that, I want to support bringing people together,
right,
to vent, to dialogue, to move towards solutions,
right,
to get those trainings so that everyone's learning how impacts happen and how to communicate when conflict arises. And so that is how we can help at the center.
Right.
As far as, out in the community, again, we have people that are aligned with systems. And we, as community folks, have to learn how to use people in their positions and not make them feel alienated by their own people.
Right.
We have all been perpetrators,
right,
and even victims of that.
Now, let me ask you something, because you bring up a good point. We have a lot of organizations in our community, and many organizations from outside coming into our community, yet the needs of the community seem not to be met. Why is that?
Well, I think there's many reasons why the needs are not met.
One good reason. Give us one good reason.
Well, I can give an example.
Okay.
And I won't use names or anything like that, but I was asked by someone who is in one of the systems at the top, why do I have to meet with 8 or 9 organizations about the same thing at different times? Because when we appear divided, it is easier for things to slip through.
Right.
When we are united, shoulder to shoulder, arm, or arm in arm,
Right.
it is different for people or things to slip through or people to get caught up in webs because everybody is communicating.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
is on the same page at the same level. There is no one above anyone. We're on equal grounds. And when we go to advocate for supportive services or change, we go as one and not as 9.
And see that right there. So how do we bring community organizations together and individuals to help build ongoing permanent relationships for the purpose of applying a collective vision for the benefit of the community?
So again, I can go back to Center for Community Cohesion because we are only one piece of the whole collaborate and cohesiveness that is needed in the community. And my challenge is to bring folks together to try to forgive one another.
All right.
Together, that's not me doing it.
Right.
They have to come together to do that. I'm just facilitating a place and a tool.
Right.
But having a place for folks to come together to train. I mean, we have multiple trainings going on in Southeastern. We have one coming up December 19th for Spanish speaking and English speaking. And it's an all-day training called The Exchange.
Okay.
And it really, really delves into communication and how the art works, how to deal with conflict, and what conflict looks like. So again, the English speaking one will be at 3330 Market Street in San Diego, and the Spanish speaking one will be at 611 South 35th Street. Okay. And so again, it's 9:30 to 4:30. Please, my number is 619-534-9938. People can contact me to RSVP and also contact me to get involved, because I can't, the center is not going to do anything alone. Right. This is a collaborative effort. Again, we have expertise in communication, but we are not the experts in everything.
Right.
And so we want to bring the experts that are in the community together, and those that are learning how to become experts, and the kids, and the the systems together to deal with, to vent, because you got
together. That's one of the I think key things, because when we talk about community engagement, how to engage the community to build relationships with each other for the sake of the community and not for the sole purpose of making money. Because it seems like the only time we can come together is when some money is involved and folks don't get funding. And so that's fine and then, because it takes money to make things happen. But the Bible says money answers all things. So we understand that. But the motive and the purpose of it should be for really having a passion, a concern, and a love for the community, to benefit the community. How do we do that? Bring these communities together, not just think about the money, but like really we want the community for the sake of the community.
So I think for me, in looking at that there's two things, because people have to live, but also communities have to thrive.
Right.
And when people are doing well, in communities where people are living well, their community is thriving.
Right.
And there is a minimal, if none, prison pipeline impacts in those communities. And so I think that we should not forget that there's a need for funding, and I call it being vested in investment. But there's also a need for a people investment, and service. And so, no matter what direction people are going in, as far as the level of positioning in the community that they want to be in, whatever it may be, in a job or community advocate or leader or whatever it may be, that people have to change. I can only change Tasha. When I changed me, I changed generations of my family, because my children are no longer looking at a legacy of crime, or now my kids have a legacy left for them of success, of community, of advocacy, of supporting people, no matter what their differences are.
Now, looking at that, how do we bring about the social change in our community that will generate a collective power for the powerless? Because that's very important.
So I think to talk about coming together, all of this, we can have little spurts of what looks like successes when we do it divided. But the greater change happens when we're united. Change can be sustained longer in unity than it can in solo entities working on stuff. And holding people that we vote for or are elected, or placed in, those positions by people we have voted for. Holding them accountable as we also hold community folks accountable. Because we have to make suppression an option, but we have to make intervention the first option. We have to make prevention the first options. Intervention, because it has been a huge money-making aspect of America, suppression. Incarceration. Millions and billions of dollars have been invested in the prison pipeline. Now we want to come together to ask there be a change in systems, which is hard. Change is hard for everybody. But if we change the systems, all of them, even community has a system. If we change those systems to benefit intervention and prevention first with the same processes that they have on those folks on the prison pipeline, then we can see a lot of change. And I know that some people in certain systems will think of an impact to them by dollars and cents, because suppression makes money. Charges in the court process makes money. But if we can tie all of those people into a diversion and intervention process that is also making money, people won't lose jobs. Their job positions and descriptions will be diverted into an intervention and prevention process.
And that's where say, hey, start getting some more, start planning to get training in other areas, because we're going to change the system. Now, let me, before I ask you my next question, I want to make a statement, then ask you a question. I believe to bring real change in policies, we have to be a part of the decision-making process.
Yes.
It seems to me that blacks in the community don't want a seat at the table because they don't want to look like sellouts. I get that a lot. Whether when talking about the DA's office, dealing with the police, these are systems. How do we organize community groups in order to influence government, corporations, and institutions? And I know the Black Lives Matter movement have made a lot of impact in the sense of dealing with that pipeline, the justice and police brutality. But I don't think that, I think that's one avenue, one slice of the pie. What do you say about that?
So for me, and what I've always said, I've talked to, some youth and elders as well. You can only do so much change from the outside.
Right.
But on the inside, change can be consistent and can stick over time, a longer period of time, when we have people making change from the inside to the outside. We don't have a lot of blacks or African Americans that are recruited or even applying, because they are recruited. They had a recruitment for police officers at Jacob Center, and not many people showed up from the community. However, if we're not in the police department, we can't change the police department.
That's right.
Because when we've had Captain Tony McElroy and Captain McKinney, who galvanized changes and were pioneers in opening doors, and we don't know what they had to deal with on the back end, but we know that they opened doors for individuals, and many other folks have opened doors. Sergeant Bill Kelso, and Lieutenant Hutchinson, and we have a community representative, Akon Thomas, who is in Southeastern. We have officers to benefit us, and we need to use them in their position to help bring change. And we need to become a part. I have not seen one person on the Citizens Review panel that looks like me. I haven't seen one person.
So now we got about a minute left, and last I told you, we're not going to be able to finish this in one setting, because we could talk about this all day long. But and we do this work, so maybe we come back and talk about the Compassion Project and CAS and some of the work we're doing there. But wanted to, because you come back from LA, wanted to get you reintroduce you back to community, your new role, with the National Conflict Resolution Center, and I know you're going to do great work over there, and we're going to support you in that. Do you have anything else you'd like to add in the quick 15 seconds that you may have left?
Yes, I want to just tell people that whatever has been going on in our community, let's not make that a continued legacy. We come from, greater legacies. We come from a people of greatness, and we need to remember that we are great, and that we can do all things, and that God has placed us, whomever, whatever we serve Him as, whether we be Christians or Muslims or even atheists, that there is something in us that is we have a purpose, all of us, and that let's use that purpose to benefit the greater community, in making changes that really place people in where they are supposed to be in their lives.
All right, I want to thank you, Tasha Williamson, for being on the show. It was an honor to have you and privilege to have you on. I'd like to encourage all my listeners to come by and visit our church worship service on Saturdays, 11:30 at 610 South 30th Street, San Diego. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for another great show on What's Happening Now with your host, Bishop Bowser, on KBLKradio.com, and may Yahweh bless you.
Honey, so you can see